This is something I've been hesitant to share for a while, but now I feel like I need to get it off my chest. It happened about a year ago, and I've replayed the events in my mind more times than I can count, but I still don't have any answers. The more I think about it, the stranger it gets. So, bear with me as I try to explain exactly what happened. It all started one regular weekday morning, or at least I thought it was regular. I was staying at home, working remotely due to the whole work from home trend, which meant I had the luxury of waking up a little later than usual. My wife, Emily, and our two kids, Sam and Lily, were usually up and out of the house by the time I got out of bed, which wasn't unusual. They had their own routines. Emily would take the kids to school, run some errands, and sometimes come back before lunch. That morning, though, I felt off from the second I woke up. I couldn't quite put my finger on why, but it was one of those moments where you just feel like something isn't right. I shrugged it off as waking up on the wrong side of the bed and headed downstairs, expecting the house to be emptied, as usual. But when I got to the kitchen, the first thing that struck me was how quiet everything was. Now, our house isn't the loudest, but there's always some sort of ambient noise, maybe the hum of the fridge or the sound of a car passing outside. That morning, though, the silence felt suffocating. I couldn't even hear the usual neighborhood noises. No dogs barking, no cars driving by, no birds chirping. Just silence. I tried to shake it off, thinking maybe I was just overanalyzing things. I poured myself a cup of coffee and decided to make a bagel. As I was reaching for the cream cheese, I noticed the back door was wide open. Emily must have forgotten to close it when she left with the kids, I thought. Not a huge deal, but still weird. I walked over and shut it, and that's when I noticed something even weirder. The front door was wide open too. That's when I started to feel uneasy. Emily was always so careful about keeping the doors locked, especially with the kids in the house. I thought maybe they'd gone out to play in the yard, but when I stepped outside, the yard was completely empty. No sign of them. And then it hit me. Both cars were still in the driveway. How could they have left without the cars? I stepped out to the front porch, scanning the street. That's when I saw it. My neighbor Matt's front door was wide open too. Matt's been my best friend since childhood, and his family and mine are close. Our kids play together all the time, and if something weird was going on, I figured Matt would know. So, I walked over to his house, thinking maybe Emily and the kids had gone over there. But when I knocked and called out, there was no answer. His house was just as silent as mine. The eerie part was that all of Matt's family cars were still in the driveway too. I stood there for a moment, completely confused. At this point, a small knot of panic started forming in my stomach. I stepped back outside, and that's when I noticed it. Every house on our street had its front door wide open. Every single one. And not a single person in sight. The whole street, usually bustling with life and noise, was now as still as a graveyard. I rushed back to my house, my heart racing. I grabbed my phone, hoping to call Emily, but when I picked it up off the charger, the screen wouldn't turn on. It was fully charged, but it just wasn't responding at all. That's when I heard something, faint, like the sound of footsteps. I froze, straining my ears to catch it. The sound was coming from the front yard. My first thought was that maybe Emily and the kids had come back, so I rushed to the window to look. I saw someone standing there. A man. He was standing still in the middle of my front lawn, just looking up at the sky. I couldn't make out his face clearly from where I was standing, but he didn't move or react when I opened the door. It was like he didn't even notice me. I called out, "Hey, do you need help?" But he didn't respond. He just kept staring up, completely still. That's when I noticed something even stranger. He wasn't the only one. As I looked further down the street, I saw more people, all standing in their front yards, all staring up at the sky. Some were closer to their houses. Others were near the road, but every single one of them had their heads tilted back, looking at something I couldn't see. I stepped back inside and shut the door, my hands shaking. I didn't know what to do. I kept telling myself that maybe it was some kind of weird neighborhood prank, but it didn't make sense. These were my neighbors, people I'd known for years, and they wouldn't do something like this. I tried my phone again, but still nothing. So I did the only thing I could think of. I grabbed my laptop and tried to get online. But when I opened it up, there was no Wi-Fi signal. It wasn't just that the internet was down. It was like the Wi-Fi had never existed in the first place. There wasn't even an option to connect. At this point, my panic was in full swing. I rushed back outside, determined to find Emily, the kids, or at least someone who could explain what was happening. But the second I opened the door again, everything was normal. The man in my yard? Gone. The people standing in the street? Gone. The front doors that had been wide open? All closed. I stood there in shock, trying to process what had just happened. I felt like I was losing my mind. Was I hallucinating? Dreaming? It all felt so real, but now everything was just normal again. I was about to head back inside when I heard the sound of a car pulling into the driveway. I turned around to see Emily and the kids getting out of the car, holding bags of groceries like nothing had happened. I rushed over to them, asking where they had been, but Emily just looked at me like I was crazy. "We've been out running errands," she said. "We've only been gone for about an hour." I tried to explain what had just happened. The open doors, the silent houses, the people staring at the sky. But she didn't believe me. She thought maybe I had a bad dream or was just stressed from work. I even checked with Matt later that day, but he said he and his family had been home the whole time, and they hadn't noticed anything strange. To this day, I have no explanation for what happened. It was like for a brief moment, I had slipped into some parallel version of my neighborhood where everything was wrong. Maybe it was a glitch in reality. Maybe it was my mind playing tricks on me. But whatever it was, I've never experienced anything like it since. And now, every time I wake up to a quiet house, I can't help but feel that same sense of dread creeping up on me, wondering if it's all going to happen again.